gotta say, before we recorded this episode today, Mia was eating cereal, and personally, I think that Fruit Loops are kind of a low-tier cereal, but you know.
I mean, they're alright. They're good. I just think they're neat.
I just think they're neat.
Yeah, they're not the best thing I've ever eaten, but it's nice to start out the morning with those fruity loops, loops of fruit, one could say.
I've always been a Reese's Puffs man myself, but
oh, I've never had Reese's Puffs.
You've never had Reese's Puffs?
Yeah.
You gotta use some Reese's
Hold on,
Puffs.
I gotta sneeze. Yeah, that was a little. Consider that this episode's sneeze break for today.
Perfect. I'm so glad we had a sneeze break.
All right, so other than Fruit Loops, my favorites are Frosted Flakes and Lucky Charms.
Both good. I haven't had Frosted Flakes in a really long time. I feel like I've had Lucky Charms recently. I actually had not too long ago Lucky Charms hot chocolate.
Ooh.
It was hot chocolate with like Lucky Charms marshmallows, and it was pretty cool.
Oh, that sounds great.
It was very good. Anyway, cereal aside to everybody, welcome to the Session 0.5 podcast, your one-stop shop for all things tabletop role-playing games. My name is Theo Bazin, and this week on the podcast, we have another good friend of mine, the first person to ever run a game of Call of Cthulhu that I was a part of. It is Mia.
Hi.
All right. Without further ado, I think it's time to get into our main advice segment. This week, you know what? Sidebar. I need to stop saying this week because I'm implying that the episodes come out weekly. They do not. So if I say this week any other time, I apologize, everybody.
On behalf of everyone else, I accept your apology.
Thank you. I was worried. All right. For the main advice segment, we're talking about something that I think is probably one of my favorite realms of thinking in terms of tabletop role-playing games. Making your home game more immersive. How do you get your players involved in a truly immersive role-playing experience when you're just playing from the coziness of your own home? And I think one of the main things that we should talk about, especially now, what with the times we are in, there are both in-person ways to make this happen, and there are virtual ways to make this happen. So I think the first thing we can talk about, that I know Mia and myself are both fans of, and this transcends where you play your game. And I think we even touched upon this a little bit last episode. Voice acting in quotes.
Yes, I think voice acting is a good term to use for it. Although you could just say voices, funny voices.
Yeah, so like giving your characters voices, making them your NPCs and your player characters, whichever you may choose.
Yeah. This isn't something that everyone can do. Not everyone feels that they're good enough at doing voices to to actually, do a voice. It's easy for me because I've always loved doing voices and making weird sound effects, and I'm sure it's also a natural thing for you too.
Yeah, I do voice acting on the side, so I love to do So I love to do voices for my D&D characters, and it was actually where I started. The realm of tabletop games, is where I started doing voices and trying out things in that realm. But that's like Mia was saying, that's not to say that everybody's super comfortable with it. And I'm here to tell you right now, don't worry, you don't have to be good at it. Being good at it is not a requirement. Even if you are just changing your mannerisms a little bit, You could do stuff with your hands to make a character seem different from yourself, or just inflecting differently on your sentences. You don't have to do a full-on like voice if you don't want to, and if you want to try, go for it.
You know, the funny thing about the hand sing is that I think for some voice actors, moving your hands actually helps. Like,
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen that one behind the scenes video for Batman Arkham City, where like Mark Hamill is in the voice actor booth and he's like doing the Joker voice and he's like moving his hands around diabolically while he's speaking.
And the way I've seen like
yeah.
I've seen like I don't know if I've seen the specific video that you're talking about, but I've seen Mark Hamill doing Joker. This is another good thing to bring up. The way he moves his face is very different, like wide-eyed and insane. Like that's also a very good way to give your PCs the impression like I'm someone different right now.
Yeah, and it also helps you.
And it helps you a lot. Yeah. So it's different a little bit voicing characters on the game master side and the player side, because when you're a player, you know, you're one person. When you're a game master, you are a whole lot of people. So, you know, it's arguably harder for a game master to do voices, but that's why we do these things, like just changing your mannerisms a little bit. Whereas when you're a PC, if you want to, you can spend a bunch of time thinking about how your character acts and what their voice sounds like, and that is just one step to help make your home game more immersive. So another thing I think we can talk about is setting the scene.
Yes, and I actually had something thought up for this topic specifically.
Do tell.
So the easiest thing that you can do, this is in fact easier than just like doing a voice, is describe things in more detail. Try not to just describe the sight. Try to integrate all the other senses in there. And if you can't describe something with all the other senses, try to use a lot of adjectives. You know, make it detailed so that your players can imagine it. And this is especially true for Call of Cthulhu, because like you don't want to just say, oh, and the monster opened the door. You know, like you,
because then is Cthulhu like inviting me in nicely, or is he like scarily like thrusting the door open with unnatural force, or is it slowly creaking open, making a horrid noise, like that kind of thing? It's the classic literary device of imagery. This is honestly, if you're having trouble scene setting, read some books. Go read I know I've never read the Lord of the Rings books, but my mom is always telling me to, because she thinks it'll make me better at scene setting, and honestly, she's probably right. Go read some descriptions of different things, and that can help you think of detailed ways to speak settings so that it really is immersed in your player's mind.
Yeah, and for Call of Cthulhu, one thing to suggest would be to read Lovecraft, you know, because he describes things in a very unique way. Like, he uses a lot of words like squamous and cyclopean, and just a lot of really cool words.
I've never heard of either of those words, but they sound fantastic.
Squamous is like scaly, and cyclopean is like big stone structures. Yeah,
I think bringing, building off of that, I think it's like the genre of your game. Read some literature that fits with that genre. If you're running a D&D game or a high fantasy sort of game, read some Tolkien. If you are playing Starfinder, read a Star Wars book. Read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you're playing Call of Cthulhu, read Lovecraft or read some other types of horror. And I think, speaking of genre, something that I didn't put on this that I think would be good to talk about that I just thought of. If your game has a specific genre, make sure to feel that out. Like, you don't have to, if you're doing like a realism edgy game, like, you don't have to be realistic and edgy all the time, but like, you know, bring that emotion and bring that genre out through your description.
Honestly, it's great that there's like so many different genres in TTRPG. Like, people think it's just one thing, like it's just high fantasy, but like it's not. You can do anything with
Yeah,
it. You could do like realistic slice of life stuff where the characters are just vibing, no combat,
I hope
no
somebody's made like a
supernatural stuff.
yeah, I hope somebody's made like a TTRPG where it's like a sitcom. That'd be that actually.
Yeah.
That's a pretty funny idea. Everybody picks a sitcom trope archetype.
Yeah, like one dude is like the normal dude, like the straight man. One is a comedic relief, who's like kind of angry. One of them is the Kramer, that one crazy guy who bursts
Yeah.
in every episode, and like when he opens the door, the audience laughs and claps.
I hope somebody's made that. My dog is barking once more. And one of the things that maybe the last thing, but unless we can think about anything else to talk about, one thing that I haven't done before, but I really want to try, is decorating, bringing physical, and this is probably more for like an in-person game, bringing like physical objects, to like set the scene of your actual physical table. Like, if the same way you decorate for Christmas, decorate for your Dungeons and Dragons game.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly.
Even something as simple as like turning the lights down a little bit, lighting some candles, or you can go like all out, which is something I've always wanted to try but haven't gotten the chance to.
Yeah, me neither. I haven't been able, when I was running like Call of Cthulhu in person for like my school friends, I didn't really have much stuff I could like decorate with. But there was my I know I told you about this, Theo, but for the audience's benefit, 2 years ago I went to Necronomicon, which is a Lovecraft convention, and I bought a little stuffed bat, which I named Bruce. And every game, or almost every game, I would try to put Bruce on the table next to my game screen, and I would call him my little he's like my GM companion. He helps me. This is similar to decoration, but I also wanted to talk about props.
Yeah.
This is something that isn't as common in D&D, but in Call of Cthulhu, like there's a lot of focus on it. And the cool thing about this is that even if you're not in person, it still works for like playing through Discord or Roll20, because you can just paste pictures or documents for the players to look at,
Yeah.
get them more immersed. Because why describe something or read something when you could just show them?
Yeah, I remember I have the Call of Cthulhu starter set, and it comes with like a bunch of like cool like letters, and things like that, like different like clues. So absolutely, if you're running like a homebrew game, feel free to make stuff like that. Your players
Yeah.
will love it, like almost guaranteed.
And if it's even better if it's like not physical objects, because like paper is still a physical object, but like something that you could touch and feel, like a statue or something. That is something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah. If I was a better visual artist, I would go all out. Like, I'm sure there are some listeners out there who, like myself, are terrible at making anything that is visual art. But like, I see on like Reddit all the time, and like Twitter, like people who like make and paint their own miniatures and like print their own like, or like build their own like battle sets. Like, I don't know if you've seen, like, you've probably seen Critical Role or Dimension 20, where they have these big, very like grandiose battle sets for like all their miniatures. and they're super, super cool. That is a great way to be immersive. Some of you might not have the budget or skill to do that, but there are ways to translate that.
On the subject of like miniatures and whatnot, one time I saw this video, which I cannot for the life of me find right now, unfortunately, because it was a really cool video. This dude, for his campaign, he built a miniature of a like Lovecraftian like giant like monster, and it's like as tall as a person.
Oh my god!
And it was he put it on the table.
Does that count as a miniature at that point? Like,
I mean, it's still smaller than how big the thing would be in real life.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, and I assume it's to scale.
Yeah. That sounds insane. I'm trying to imagine like a person-sized thing on my table.
But even if it's like not like as big as a person, there's still some pretty big miniatures out there.
Yeah, like the dragon ones.
Yeah.
Huge things.
Yeah, it must be so great to just plop down this big old dragon on the table and just hear your players' reactions.
Yeah.
Like
just thinking about like, yep, and here he is. Like, here's a
the
giant
table
dragon.
just like there's just a crack in the table.
You broke the table. It's all for immersion. It's all for immersion.
Yeah, of course.
I think that's kind of all that I had to talk about. Mia, is there anything else that you think is important to mention?
I guess going back to the voice thing, for me, that's kind of one of the benefits of being a trans girl, the amount of range that I have.
Yeah. I'm not trans, but I'm a singer.
Oh.
Two obviously very comparable things.
Yeah, of course.
But
you do have a great anime girl voice, so would you mind showing it to our dear audience?
I have to think about it. Hold on. It's like,
hello. Bruh.
Yeah, so being a singer helps with that. Yeah. Don't be afraid to try to learn to like expand your vocal range in that way.
And on the flip side of that, well, you can do a good anime girl voice. I can do like a really good badass like anime dude voice. Like,
yeah.
お前はもう死んでる
Or was that too loud?
No, it's perfect.
My audio was like super big, like
Yeah.
the wavelength for that.
We'll figure it out in editing, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
さよなら
Sayonara. Yeah.
Boost the fire
We're nerds. We're all nerds
Yeah.
here. We're all a nerd collective. Don't be afraid to go all out. Is the Master, I must go all out just this once. Don't be afraid to go all out for your games, because it will benefit your fun and your players' fun. And with that, it's time to move on to our secondary, slightly smaller advice segment. Yes.
All right, let's take those questions, baby.
We didn't get any questions because we don't get any questions. Send in questions.
Oh, okay then.
Please.
Let's not take those questions.
We're not taking any
baby.
questions. Well, we are taking questions. Send them in. We have an email.
Yes, absolutely.
Session 0.5pod@gmail.com. Session05pod@twitter.com. Send in your questions. Send in your stories. But our secondary advice segment this week is all about making combat more enjoyable. I find that sometimes, especially when I'm playing 5e and combat, like, there's like two options. It's either combat is fun but short and easy, or combat is long and the right difficulty, but it's very boring and takes a long time to do. So if you find yourself having that problem, here's some ways to make combat more enjoyable. So I think one of the things that really helped me, especially when I was like running my first game, and I started, when you get to those higher, when your players get to a higher level, it can be hard to balance around them, because like I said, you're either making it too easy or too long. So one of the things I like to do is offer another objective that's not just killing somebody. So like make like a puzzle. Maybe, sure, there's some enemies, but maybe you're trying to like find 3 keys to open a locked door at the end of the room. Or like maybe you're trying to stop some sort of ancient ritual.
Or this happened pretty recently in my campaign, but like if there's like a MacGuffin in the game, you could try like during the combat session trying to like snatch it from the enemy. So like it would be really cool if like during the combat the MacGuffin would go back and forth from the good guys having it to the bad guys having it to the good guys having it again, and so on, until one group finally gets it. And in my case, the bad guys got it because I forgot I could just use Mage Hand and grab it. It was a pretty cool scene though, like they were flying in the air on like a griffin or something, and my character was just like holding on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do stuff like that. Because when you're just whacking somebody over and over again, it can get really boring. And you're just like, yeah, you hit him. Yeah, you do 10 damage. He's still up. Another round.
Another thing to do is, this is going back to earlier with making games more immersive, describe the combat more.
Yeah.
I think you left by this point, but in the last Call of Cthulhu session we had, where that NPC I was controlling was shooting the alien, I didn't just say, oh, he shot him. I had him like he was on the ground bleeding. He raised his gun up at the alien's head and said, "See you in hell, you alien son of a bitch," and then blew its head off.
Yeah.
And it was a really epic moment, I like to think.
Yeah, this is important on like the player side too. Players, hey, all players out there, don't be afraid to have fun describing how you're doing things in combat. Like even if you didn't roll like a nat 20 or some kind of crit in another system, don't be afraid to say, I take my spear aloft and pierce it right directly between his ribs. Like, say cool stuff like that. You don't have to say, I'm gonna hit him all the time.
But yeah, just describe it in brutal detail. Make the fight seem real. Give it like some impact. Like if your characters can like feel the stuff going on, kind of, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. And this, I think, goes for like magic as well. Like you could say like I cast firebolt, and that's cool. Or you could say like a bolt of flame emanates from the center of my fists, and I aim it to hit directly between the enemy's eyes. Or even like, and I think I've talked about this on previous episodes, reskinning based on your character. So maybe your character is like lightning based, and your firebolt looks like lightning. Or an example I used for one of my recent campaigns, one of my players is playing like their like superhero character from my superhero game was like the result of Russian experimentation, and they cast magic missile. So I said a couple of like tiny ballistic missiles emanate from your palms and like go and hit the enemy. Don't be afraid to do cool stuff like that, even if it's not entirely rules as written.
Yeah, and if we're done with this subject, I would like to just say one more thing, in that you could have the option to just not have combat at all, to resolve it through other methods, or if the combat's already stopped, you could try to roll to like de-escalate the conflict. they've even convinced like the minions of the bad guy, like, why are we working for this person in the first place, and have them be on your side for the rest of the combat encounter.
Yeah.
Which is something that happened last week.
Yeah, don't be afraid, my DMs and GMs out there. Don't be afraid to let your players dismantle your combat through means that aren't fighting. You don't have to plan your combat to be like gamed around, but it's kind of cool when it is. Like Mia said, talk to the enemy, to try to get them on your side and stuff like that.
Yeah, but just always make sure they have multiple options.
Yeah.
You know? Going for my campaign that I'm running right now for Imagination Guild, that Theo is in right now, you guys could have, like, fought the 2 FBI agents. You didn't have to convince them, even though that's kind of what I wanted, because it would give the players more NPC and
instead
more support.
They're on our team now.
Yeah, but like you guys could have just like attacked them. It probably would have been a bad idea because they both had pistols, and most of you guys didn't have guns by this point. But still, it's just always leave options available. No one likes an RPG where there's just very, very few options, you know?
Yeah.
That's why Fallout New Vegas is so good. Yeah.
And that was the main, that was the point of all this, to talk about how great Fallout New Vegas is.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And now that we've realized that main point, let's go on to news. So I didn't find a whole lot of news this week, but Mia has saved me just before, literally like right before we started recording this, brought up some cool stuff. So Mia, if you want to take it away on either of the things you talked about.
Yeah. So, first one, this fact is pretty short, but in Japan, Call of Cthulhu is actually more popular than D&D. To the point where I think when they're trying to explain what D&D is to someone, they'll just say, "Oh, it's like Call of Cthulhu with swords."
It's super cool and also super funny. Like thinking about like when I was a kid, like only thinking that Dungeons and Dragons existed, thinking about like over there only Call of Cthulhu exists.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that there's adults who think the only thing that exists is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Which is why, as a part of Imagination Guild, I've been so happy to like introduce other systems to the game. We should explain what.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
point.
BT Dubs, so you're not confused. Imagination Guild is part of a thing we do for YPI, Rhode Island Youth Pride Inc., where we get together and play tabletops every week.
Yeah, it's not a part of YPI.
Yeah, it's a separate.
They're two different they're two different organizations, but they've partnered together, and YPI was generous enough to allow them to use their physical space and now their Discord server, which is great. But the other tidbit I wanted to talk about, and the part that is probably like actually news, is and it's kind of old news, but to my knowledge, it hasn't been discussed on the podcast.
It has not.
Yes. So Magpie Games, who created the game Masks: The New Generation, which is a superhero game using the Powered by the Apocalypse system, they made a deal with Viacom CBS, and they are going to make a role-playing game based on the world of Avatar.
That's super
so,
cool.
Yeah, it is. And apparently it's also going to be using the Powered by Apocalypse system, which I wonder how they're going to do.
Yeah,
exactly.
I do wonder. Yeah, I've only played Monster of the Week in terms of Powered by the Apocalypse games, So I'm wondering if there's going to be like specific archetypes, like maybe based on, I don't know, I haven't watched all that much Avatar, but like Fire Nation, Firebender, Waterbender, Non-Bender, like that kind of thing.
I'm not sure if they're divided by nation and more like character archetype.
Maybe.
Like one character is like the aggressive one, so they're very
The
like fighting
aggressive
focused,
one.
like tough. One is very spiritual. They're like calm. One of them is like practical, like Sokka, where they rely on like tools and weapons. But yeah, I am very, very excited for this game to come out. And for anyone else who is excited, I will read from the statement that Magpie Games made. The role-playing game's core book is slated for a February 2022 release, with 2 supplements to follow in August 2022 and February 2023, titled Republic City and The Spirit World, respectively. And also, the cool thing is that the book will cover both the Last Airbender era and The Legend of Korra. So you can play in... Actually, I think there's like 5 different time periods that are covered. So there's a lot of range that you have.
Yeah.
Which is great.
That sounds super cool.
And
Always love new games.
I know here in the Imagination Guild, we are gonna play it probably as soon as it comes out.
Ooh.
So I know that even though you didn't have any news, you had some things that you found on Reddit.
Yes. Whenever get ready for this to become a thing, dear listeners. Whenever I'm in a tizzy, I turn to Reddit. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about that I found on Reddit was from DM Academy, posted by u/Asimar Shield Maiden. 5 times when it's okay to just say no. And I think that this is a problem especially for game masters. When do you tell your players no? Like, when are you railroading by telling them no, or when are you preserving your game by telling them no? And so Asimar Shield Maiden here is giving us some tips that we're going to talk about. So first one, when it's literally impossible, which seems dumb but is a good tip. If something in your game is impossible in the world, or based on the rules, it is fine to say no.
Yeah.
So, like, if your player says, I want to grow wings and fly, and they can't cast a spell, or they don't have a racial trait, or whatever else that allows them to do that, say no. No, you cannot grow wings and fly.
Yeah. I don't think it's a dumb thing because, you know, I think most of the time the players won't know much about the world you're playing in as much as you, the DM.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not the case, and like the players know more about the lore than you do, it's bad. You're in a bad situation, buddy.
Yeah. The next thing was when it's unofficial or homebrew content. So this can be like anything from like Unearthed Arcana to like somebody's homebrew spell that allows you to create a giant hot dog at will. Like,
Why would you not allow that?
I would allow that. To be clear, I would allow that. But if it's like some homebrew that you look over and is going to break your game, say no. Or if you're concerned that like this Unearthed Arcana that just came out is a bit too much or doesn't quite fit with the vibe of your game, it's okay to say no, because that's not technically official content. I will say that I am a big fan of Unearthed Arcana. I love to test out new stuff. But I think it's also important in that instance to know that you can do some adjusting because it's unofficial, because it's homebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Also, for the hot dog spell, I feel like you could just do like a reflavor of create food and drink.
yeah. Back to what's
Or
important, the hot dog
you can just
spell.
only create hot dogs. But what do you mean? This is the most important part of the entire podcast.
Good berry, but it's tiny hot dogs.
Yes.
I'm gonna play a D&D character who is a hot dog stand guy who can create hot dogs at will now. All right, we got a couple more things here. When a player is trying to hijack the campaign for extra attention, yes. When a player is trying to, like, if a player who, like, especially one who doesn't step up that often or who doesn't talk a whole lot, wants to take the spotlight a little bit, you know, maybe let him. That's totally fine. For a player to take the spotlight for a little bit. But when a player, like, fully hogs the spotlight, say no. Because tabletop RPGs are most often a group thing. So you don't want to have just one player who is running the whole show. That is definitely an instance where you should say no.
Yep. You don't want to, like, give that guy what he wants. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't make it fun for you. The only person it's fun for is them. And if they're the only person having fun, you know, that's not a good experience.
We got two more things that honestly kind of go hand in hand. And I think me and Jared touched upon this a little bit last episode. When it's deliberately upsetting someone IRL, or when you are being forced into having a bad time. Real life mental health is always more important than the game or the story. And I think, Mia, you could probably speak to this, especially running horror games as your forte.
Yeah, it's always something to be concerned about. Because, you know, I said this before in the last game, an alien's head got blown off and there's like viscera and like when I first started running it, I was like, could I go all out with this? Should I have like gore and whatnot? Because like Imagination Guild is a youth-centered thing.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if it was allowed, but Juan, who's the head of the organization, and I think some other people just told me, yeah, just check in with them beforehand and they would let me know, which was great of them to do because, you know, I was able to give people warnings and say, hey, there's gonna be the violence in this game is gonna be a bit more extreme than in D&D, so if anyone doesn't want that, let me know now and I'll try to do something. And of course, everyone was okay with it, because everyone there is, you know, sadistic and enjoys bloodshed, of course, you know, like me.
Yes, we are all little demon children, and we love bloodshed.
The conservatives in the 80s was right. D&D does corrupt you.
We are Satanists, and we crave visceral gore.
Yes, of course. That should be your high school yearbook quote. From graduating.
We are Satanists, and we crave visceral gore. Myself.
Yeah, but if everyone in the group is cool with it, that's cool. That's great, even. But if someone has concerns about a certain subject matter, because it may be triggering, or they're just, or just even if the game is run for like young people, like 8-year-olds, you know.
Yeah, 8-year-olds don't want to hear about gunfire blowing an alien's head up in a bunch.
Yeah,
of...
they totally don't.
Yeah.
Wait, you've talked to an 8-year-old, haven't you?
Actually, I am a camp counselor. A lot of my kids were 8-year-olds. They would totally love an alien getting shot in the head and their head blowing up. But not every 8-year-old is the same. Same thing as how not every person is the same. And, you know, flip-flopping it a little bit, this is just as important as the DM's side. If your player is going a little further than you would like in a certain instance, say, no, I'm uncomfortable. And if they are a good and loyal player of your table, they will say okay, and they will think about you and your needs first and foremost.
Yeah. if I can say one more thing about this subject, it would be with Call of Cthulhu. A lot of it takes place in the past. You can definitely run a game in the modern setting, and like the game has stuff that will help you do that. But most of the modules and source books and stuff are written for the decade of the 1920s, when Lovecraft was doing most of his writing. Now, I don't know how many of y'all are historical experts, but the
my
1920s...
audience is all historical experts.
Yeah, kind of racist, not gonna lie. Yeah, kind of yikes.
A little bit
a
yikes
little
in the
problematic.
1920s.
I'm making a call out post on Twitter for the 1920s.
Cancel the 1920.
Yeah, cancel H.P. Lovecraft, even though he's been dead since 1937. But yeah, I mean, I know in our group there's some POC players or LGBTQ players. Just so if you're playing in a different time period where bigotry was more common than it is now, although given recent events I'm beginning to reconsider that, but it's always something to think about. Like, I know in my games, like my campaign takes in the 1950s, and I don't want to, like, I've never had racism, like, come up directed at the players, but I still want to, like, be like, hey, it's the 50s, you know? So talking about these things can be hard. And in a game where you're just trying to have fun, it gets even harder. So it's always something to think about.
Yes. Think about your players first and foremost. And I think the last thing we're going to talk about before we take a quick break is this other thing that I found on Reddit. This was a question that was asked on r/D&D Next, posted by u/originalaardvark48. Why are people against playing evil characters in D&D? And this subject is kind of a hard one, I will admit that. Playing evil characters wrong can really derail a game. Especially if, like, you have a player who's playing an evil character who is deliberately trying to clash with the goals of the rest of the group. Which is why it's important to either, one, play an evil character who is an evil character with a party of evil characters, and you're playing like an evil character game or campaign, and two, play an evil character that is vibing with the rest of the group. So like, maybe I think this is something from that I heard. This is something adjacent to what I heard on Adventuring. I believe it's called Adventuring Academy, which is the like college humor D&D advice podcast. You know, maybe your evil character is a crazy person who just likes the party for some reason, and is willing to go with their goals. Or maybe your character is kind of has to go along with the party because their goals are relatively similar, and therefore they're all in this together. You can still play an evil character without it ruining everything.
Yeah. Or maybe just like, you guys are all just plunged into a situation. You don't know each other, but like, if you don't work together, you're gonna die. So it would be in the evil character's self-interest to just be like, yeah, I should probably work with these people. But that doesn't ensure that your character might not like double cross the rest of the group.
Yeah.
Hell, this even happens in all evil campaigns. I know it happened in the Hell one that you did for us. But yeah.
Evil characters can be cool. I think the reason that people are against it is because either they've experienced one of those similar like hypotheticals that we talked about where it didn't work very well, or people hear about those stories and think it's a bad idea, but there are ways to make it work that are safe and fun for everyone.
Yeah. Or maybe they're just a goodie. They're a goody two-shoes like me.
Yeah.
I think the most morally dubious character I've ever played was Chaotic Neutral.
Yeah.
And that was like this month. Every other character has been some form of good.
Yeah, I usually always play like neutral good characters.
Oh, neutral good is the best.
Neutral good is the best alignment. And with that, I think it's time to take a quick break. Alright, everybody, we're back. And it's that time again. It's shill time, everybody.
Yeah.
We love shill time.
Back and better than ever.
Yeah.
It's chill time.
This is, of course, the Session 0.5 podcast. You can find us on YouTube. We're uploading most future episodes on YouTube. The first episode is out on a bunch of other stuff, but most of the future stuff will be on YouTube until I figure some stuff out. So you can find our YouTube channel, which is just called Session 0.5. You can follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter is called @Session05pod. That's SESSION 05POD. And if you'd like, you can tweet at us with your questions and your stories and anything else you want to tweet at us. You can also email us. Like I mentioned earlier, our email is session0.5pod@gmail.com. That's SESSION 0.5pod @gmail.com.
Yeah.
And
Oh, could I shill something?
yeah, actually, if you have anything to shill, absolutely go for it.
So, since I mentioned the Imagination Guild earlier, and I really like the organization, I figured I would chill them as well. They have an Instagram page. So their Instagram is the Imagination Guild PVD. All lowercase, no spaces. So if you are a youth from Rhode Island and you would like to play some tabletop and maybe even with me or Theo,
The celebrities.
check them out. They have information on their Instagram. They also have a Facebook, which I'm not gonna shill that. You can just search them on Facebook. But we play on Tuesdays on Discord, on the YPI Discord from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And then on Thursdays, we just have a little thing called Tavern Talks where we just talk. You know, it's very casual. But not a lot of people show up to that, but I digress. It's available for youth ages 14 to 23. And if you are interested and want to learn more, email dev, that's DEV, at youthprideri.org.
Yes. You can also follow me on Twitter, if you'd like, @TheoJB2. And you can also, if you want, I've been streaming on Twitch recently. And you can follow me on Twitch, which is just TheoJB657.
Yeah, and if you want to follow me on Twitter, my @ is NecronomiQueen. And my username is GamerGirlThanos. I mainly retweet memes
And what a username
that I think
it
are
is,
funny.
frankly.
Yeah, GamerGirlThanos. Frankly, I'm happy for her.
All right.
Yeah.
I think shill time has come to a close. So without that, I think it's time for everybody's favorite part of the podcast.
The unremarkable presidential fact.
We talk all the time about tabletop games, but sometimes it's important to learn. Sometimes you gotta get knowledge about history, okay? And here with our unremarkable presidential fact, we aim to achieve that goal. Today we have some facts courtesy of my brother Will. Thanks, Will, for providing some facts today, as well as a bonus fact that we'll get to courtesy of Mia. So, Today's unremarkable president fact is about Lyndon B Johnson. And when Will told me this fact, I fully didn't believe him until I did some research. Lyndon B Johnson was, as this article from historycollection.com states, he was not very shy about his bodily functions. He would frequently demand that people follow him into the bathroom and continue speaking to him while he was on the toilet. He was also apparently very proud of his genitals, nicknaming his penis Jumbo. Lyndon, what are you doing?
I mean, if you look at a picture of him, he seems like the kind of person who would do that.
He absolutely was that kind of person.
And there is this one quote from the article I read that I would like to read out because I think it's hilarious. So, after his term in office was over, a tape surfaced of Johnson speaking to a tailor where he brought up the fact that his pants didn't leave enough room for his genitals. And I'm going to read what he said. The crotch where the nuts hang is too tight. It's just like riding a wire fence. See, if you can't leave me an inch from where the zipper ends round under my back to my butthole, so I can let it out there if I need to. I don't think that really sounds like Lyndon B Johnson. Sounds more like Forrest Gump.
Does now.
Also, to clarify, he said bunghole and not butthole. So he was ahead of his time. Beavis and Butthead didn't come around and popularize that phrase until the 90s. This guy was president in the 60s. Well, what a guy.
My man.
What a man.
All right, enough about Lyndon. Mia, if you'd like to take over for your bonus presidential fact for this episode.
So this is my fact. So I'm going to put this bluntly. Jimmy Carter saw a UFO. On September 18th, 1973, he filed a report with the International UFO Bureau on September 18th, which is my birthday, and claiming he had seen an unidentified flying object in October of 2069. I'm gonna lay this out to you. So Jimmy Carter was in Leary, Georgia, and he was waiting outside for a Lions Club meeting to begin, whatever that is. And it was 7:30, at about 7:30, and he spotted what he called the darndest thing I've ever seen. So Carter, as well as 10 to 12 other people who witnessed the same event, described the object as very bright with changing colors and about the size of the moon. He reported that the object hovered about 30 degrees above the horizon and moved in towards the Earth and away before disappearing into the distance. He later told a reporter that after the experience, he vowed never again to ridicule anyone who claimed to have seen a UFO. And if I remember correctly, he actually promised on the campaign trail that he would disclose anything the government knows about aliens, which is something that pretty much every president has said since him at some point. So far, not much. Although they did declassify like a bunch of stuff like in January after Biden got elected. There is some interesting stuff in there, let me just say, but God, do you remember that Galactic Federation thing from like November? Nothing came of that.
The guy who was like who apparently like spoke to aliens, but they're not ready to speak to us yet or whatever. That was so wild.
And the dude was the leader of the Israeli space program. So I mean, he would know, but like nothing came of it.
Yeah,
like,
does he know El Sabe, or is he just insane? The world may never know.
Yeah, no one followed up on it. No one, and it was really weird because someone who was close to him said, no, he's not insane, but he went too far with these comments. And I was like, why did he say it then? It probably would be a marketing tactic for the book, in which case it's a really bad marketing tactic because no one's really talked about it since.
Yeah.
I remember it trending on Twitter, though, and a bunch of people were making memes about the Galactic Federation. And it appeared on late night TV a few times, but that was it.
Yep.
No one... yeah.
All right. That's it for real-world events. Thanks for listening to the Unremarkable Presidential Fact. Now, for our last segment of the podcast today, it's time for some tabletop role-playing game stories. Woo! And I'm going to let Mia take this one away. Mia, do you have any stories to tell us?
To call this a story is an understatement. This is more of an epic, or a fable, a folk tale that people would tell around the campfire. It's really just that legendary of a moment. Okay.
Prepare yourselves, everybody.
I am going to read out this story for you all. So, in my personal D&D campaign, where I'm a player, something very interesting happened. So, my group and I have playing through Ghosts of Saltmarsh ever since June, and it's been going on so long that, like, we've gone past, like, the stuff in the book, and now we're just playing a campaign set in Saltmarsh now. Like, we've gone way past that point. So, in this campaign, I am playing a character named Bayland Richter, who is a tiefling paladin and a very, very wholesome boy. I love him very much. But he's also, like, a serious badass. Like, he's really nice and kind of goofy, but, like, he's capable of, like, really f***ing you up, if I may say so myself. So, near the beginning of the campaign, about a few sessions in, when things were simple and we were just fighting pirates and not eldritch abominations and armies of orcs, Bayland got his hands on a trident of fish control. Now, this is a trident which I think 4 times a day allows him to cast Dominate Beast on any creature with an innate swimming speed. Bayland hadn't used this trident this much over the coming months, but, it was still cool to have, and he used it a few times, but it wasn't really, like, that effective until October, which was 3 months into the campaign, I believe. 3 or 4 months. So, the party was investigating some strange ruins, and we were heading through the marshes to get through. Through Bayland's survival roll, he could see that there was a trail of footprints and carriage tracks leading into the ruins. This was unusual. Why would there be so much traffic heading into some dusty old ruins? And as we walked into the ruins, we found a guy selling goat legs. Like, it was some kind of sports event. Like, he was just at a booth, and he was like, "Goat legs, get your goat legs here." And we were just like, oh, there's some kind of sports event going on here. So we walk through the tunnel, right? And we realize that it's leading into an arena. We weren't spectators. We were contestants. And it was like a coliseum, and at the front was a little boy king. Like, it was just this little kid dressed in regal clothing, and he seemed to have some pretty prestigious, and eventually our opponents started to come in, and it was a bunch of dwarves, and one of them had a gun. This was the first time a gun had showed up in the campaign, and we were just like, oh, damn. So the fight began. We were just fighting. Not much was happening. And then the boy king just announced, "I'm rather bored right now. Release the water." And the arena started to fill with water. It was getting pretty deep, and there was sort of a cross in the center that floated up along with some big floating wooden planks. So we would have to get on either that cross or one of the planks, or we would drown. But eventually, 2 of the arms of the cross sank as well. So we just had like a line that we had to stand on and some wooden planks. And then it got worse. Something swam into the arena. A megalodon. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with paleontology, but the megalodon was a giant shark that lived approximately 23 to 3.6 million years ago. It is a close relative of the great white shark. And this thing is massive. It is scary looking. The token that the DM used for this thing, it was all scarred and beaten. It looked terrifying. So, this was over 1,000 tons of pure destruction and bloodlust. And we felt like we were screwed. And it was then that I got an idea. When my turn came, I swam onto the wooden raft. And I mentioned to the party, hey, does anyone remember that trident I got? And I'm pretty sure you know where this is going. And so did my party. They were freaking out. Like, they were just like, I can't even describe it. So, now Dominate Beast requires a wisdom check with a DC of 15 to succeed. The Megalodon rolled a 9. Did I mention that a large chunk of the dwarves were already in the water? I should have said that. So, this shark just tore through these dwarves, and I was controlling it. But alas, at the end, the spell wore off, and the water receded. It was gone, and the shark died.
Dang.
One of my other players, one of the other party members ate it, and Balin got very attached to this shark.
And my man.
To be honest, so was I. And by the way, at some point during the battle, the DM, whose name is Gabe, he had a playlist going on, and Megalvania started playing. This wasn't something he had planned. It just started playing, so I just named the shark Sans. So eventually Sans died, and I'm gonna be honest, I cried. Real tears. Because I'm very sensitive. So, yeah. Rest in peace, Sans the shark.
R.I.P. Sans.
You did a great job, but alas, it had to be this way.
And as Sans lives forever in our memory, so too does this episode of the Session 0.5 podcast. Thank you all for listening. Have a good night/day.